Michelle. Alistair Manuel, are you new? Wiseman Dungelo, are you new? I know Miss Mabela, you started with us last week, I think. Tokozo, I know you. I think Alistair Manuel. Just confirm if you're new. Charlotte. Charlotte, are you new? And Tandy, are you new? Just indicate in the chat whether you're new or whether you've been here previously. Okay, Wiseman, welcome. Okay, Alistair, my apologies. Students, okay, so did a session on I just want to check where I want to start today because okay, I'm going to start today at page 154, the Constitution and you. Okay. So all of you, I want you to go to page 154. And then before we start, I want us to look at the following concepts because those, okay, Tande, welcome. Those are the concepts I need you to be familiar with, and we're going to have some discussion around that, okay? Those of you who want me to do something specific for you, if there's something specific you're struggling with, you need to download the individual consultation query form. Then I will arrange an individual session with you. Nee? Okay, so all of us go to learning unit number 7, the Constitution and you. Okay, then we'll start from there. So, in terms of terminology, you need to be able to explain, or you need understanding of, is the issue of the essential characteristics of the South African Constitution. And then you must be able to explain the following concepts: constitutionalism, constitutional supremacy, rule of law, separation of powers, transformative constitutionalism, restorative justice, and also Ubuntu. Okay? So let's start. Okay, a very, very important aspect, page 157. Okay, just above paragraph 7.1, section 167.7 of the Constitution provides for the following aspect. Okay? Please be mindful of that. Section 167.7 provides for the following. It provides the Constitution describes a constitutional issue or a constitutional matter as any issue involving interpretation, protection, or enforcement of the Constitution. Okay, so constitutional issues are based on the following aspects. Okay, it's based on the interpretation of the Constitution, it's based on the protection of the rights afforded in terms of the Constitution. And here we in many cases make reference to those fundamental rights as contained in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, also known as our Bill of Rights chapter. Okay? And also enforcement of our rights as contained in the Constitution. Okay? Also, in terms of those chapter 2 rights. Okay? So please be mindful of that. Okay? Then we can go to paragraph 7.1 on page 159. We will start there. Paragraph 7.1 on page 159. Right? We can start. Okay. Okay. So in terms of our democracy and in terms of our electoral system, okay, you know, we have the system of proportional representation, okay? So our citizens elect our government to run the country, okay? One of the expectations of the citizens is that we expect government to protect our rights, okay? There's also an expectation on government to develop and advance the country politically and economically, okay? There's also a responsibility for government to look after the well-being of the country's inhabitants and to regulate matters such as health, the environment, education, tourism, housing, population development, etc. Okay? So in term in for government to fulfill the expectations of the citizens, okay, government will need certain powers, okay, to run the country effectively, okay. because of these expectations of citizens. Okay, but the powers afforded to government or the powers given to government cannot be unlimited. Okay, it cannot be unlimited. Meaning that there must be, okay, there must be some kind of mechanism in place, students, that creates a balance between the powers of the state and the rights of the individual. Okay? If there's a situation where government exceeds its powers or makes unfair laws or takes irresponsible decisions, okay, there must then be mechanisms in place for the citizen to challenge this, okay? So when we look at all these expectations of citizens, when we look at the amount of power afforded to government, okay, what must be in place to manage all of this, okay? And the mechanism in place to manage all of this is a country's constitution, okay? So basically, what a country's constitution provides for is it sets out a blueprint or a framework, students, sets out a blueprint or a framework on how a country must be managed or how a country must be run. Okay, so basically, okay, the Constitution sets out the legislative framework or the legislative foundation on how a country must be governed. Okay, that is all contained in the country's constitution. Okay, students? So, let's see what a constitution is. Okay, so a constitution is sets out, I said, the legislative framework by which a country is governed. Okay, in most instances, or in most cases, a constitution is usually a very long document. South Africa's constitution is an example of this because our constitution consists of 14 chapters. Okay, so a constitution is usually a very long document. And very, very importantly, students, you can highlight the two following aspects. It sets out the structure, how government is structured, and the functions of each of government. It also sets out the standards that will be used to protect the individual against the abuse of state power. Okay, Now, I want to take you back to the following two aspects. It mentions that the Constitution sets out the structure and functions of government. Okay? On which structure? Okay? Now I want to see who my A students are, because my A students will be able to answer this question. Okay? My A students will be able to answer this question. Okay? Our Constitution, okay, provides for which principle, okay, when we look at the structure of government. Which principle does our Constitution provide for? Anyone? Very good, Michelle. Very good. Our Constitution provides for the doctrine of separation of powers. Okay? Michelle, what does that mean? What does separation of powers mean? Or what does the doctrine of separation of powers mean? What does the doctrine of separation of powers mean?
Good evening, Advocate.
Hi, Michelle. I'm listening.
Okay, I think it means that the powers are separated in terms of how they function, so they can't interfere with each other with regards to how they function and what they need to do. So that there can be checks and balances and they cannot overstep each other, the different branches.
Can you explain it in the South African context, please?
So in South Africa, we have three branches of government. So that would be the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So if there was an act of parliament that was made, then the executive needs to enforce that act, necessarily change it, and then the judiciary would be the ones that would take that act and interpret it and develop it. And so they would have different functions.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay.
So students, as Michelle indicated, in terms of our structure and functions of government, okay, we apply the doctrine of separation of powers, which is a common law doctrine. And basically, what this doctrine says is that the power of government, okay, is decentralized into different arms, okay, so that one branch of government or a single branch of government cannot exert too much power over the individual, okay, and there are also measures then put in place to keep branches of government accountable. And as Ms. Forbes stated, the doctrine of separation of powers is applied in South Africa, where the power of government is divided into three distinct branches. I'm just going to name it now. We will speak about it later. The first branch of power is the executive. And the executive consists of the president of our country and his cabinet. So it's the president, the deputy president, and all the various ministers and deputy ministers. That makes up our executive. Our legislature consists of two houses, the two houses of parliament, namely the National Assembly, the NA, and the NCOP, the National Council of Provinces. And these two houses of government are responsible for the enactment of legislation, the legislature. And then the third branch of government is the judiciary. Okay. And in terms of I think it's section 165 of the Constitution, the power of the judiciary is vested in our courts. Okay, so our courts is responsible for the enforcement of rules, for the enforcement of legislation. Okay, so each branch of government has its own distinctive powers. Okay. Um, okay. Sorry about that, students. Let's continue. So, those are the three um, tiers of government. Okay. So, very, very importantly, about the South African Constitution, if you look further at the definition on at paragraph 7.2, page 160, it also speaks of the Constitution also sets out standards that will be used to protect the individual against any abuse of power by the state. Okay, any abuse of power by the state. Okay, and please be mindful what makes the South African Constitution very distinctive is chapter 2 of our Constitution, which speaks to our Bill of Rights. Okay, and one of the powers, one of those sections in the Constitution which protect the individual against the abuse of state power is section 35, which relates to the rights of arrested persons. Okay, so section 35 is a very good example of that. Okay. Um, let's continue. So, also, very, very important, the students, most countries have constitutions that are written down. Okay? Most countries have constitutions that are written down. South Africa is an example of this. Okay? Meaning our constitution is codified. Okay? The South African constitution is codified and it forms part of that body of codified law. Okay? So South Africa is an example of a country whose constitution is written down. But also, please be mindful that we have a few countries, and England is an example of it, Great Britain, that do not have a single written constitution. These countries are governed by constitutional conventions and customs that have developed over a long period of time. Okay, so these countries whose constitutions are not written down, the constitutions we refer to or say are uncodified. Okay, it's uncodified. Students, are there any questions for me? Any questions for me? Muhammad Amia, can you hear me? Um, Mogao, are you new? Mogao, are you new? Okay, let's continue.
Yes, I'm new to the group.
Okay, Maga. Okay, wow. That was very loud. Okay. Um, keep your mic on mute, please. Okay. So let's see what the South African Constitution is all about. Okay, let's see what the South African Constitution is all about. Okay, paragraph 7.3 at the bottom of page 160. 7.3 at the bottom of page 160. Okay. 7.3 at the bottom of page 160. Okay. So, if we look at the South African Constitution, okay, it tells us this our Constitution, and this is now specific South African Constitution, detailed plan or a blueprint Okay, a detailed plan or a blueprint for the running of South Africa, very, very importantly, on a sound democratic basis. Okay? So, for this, okay, where's your clue for this? Your clue for this will be in chapter 1 of our Constitution. Okay? Chapter 1 of our Constitution are sections 1 to 6, which contain our founding provisions. Okay? Which says our country must be run on a democratic basis. Okay? Any questions for me so far? Any questions for me so far? Okay. So, we know our Constitution is a long document. In broad terms, it covers the following. Please, you must study it verbatim. It covers the governing of the country at national level. Students, give me 1 second quickly. 1 second. I'm going to mute for a minute quickly. Just give me a second. Okay. So firstly, it covers the governing of our country at national level, okay, provincial and local level, meaning it provides for the governing of our country at 3 levels. Okay, remember our country. Sorry, students, I broke up there now. Okay, so the Constitution covers the governing of our country at 3 levels, meaning at national level, provincial, and local level. This means the example I'm giving you that at national level, we have the head of the country as the president. Okay? At provincial level, each province, our 9 provinces, the head of each province is the premier of the province. Okay? And then we go to each municipality. Okay? And the head of each municipality is the mayor. Okay? Meaning the country is run at 3 levels. Okay? The country is run at 3 levels. Okay? Next, the Constitution deals with the legislative powers and processes of each legislative level. Okay? Remember, at national level, okay, our legislative powers rest with our legislature. Okay? And our legislature consists out of the 2 houses of parliament, namely the National Assembly as well as the NCOP, or the National Council for Provinces. Okay? Then at provincial level, remember each province has the competency to legislate laws for its own province. Okay? So the Constitution deals with that. And then the Constitution also deals with municipalities who also have legislative powers. Remember, they create bylaws. Okay? So please be mindful that our Constitution allows also for each province to have its own constitution. Okay? Out of the 9 provinces currently in South Africa, only one province has its own constitution, and that is the Western Cape province. Okay? The constitution also deals with the administration of justice by all the different courts. Okay? The administration of justice by all of the different courts. Remember, in terms of our court structure, our courts are divided into superior courts and lower courts. Okay? And you must be mindful that our lower courts, which are our magistrates' courts, are creatures of statute, and our superior courts have inherent jurisdiction. Okay? The Constitution also deals with the rules relating to regular elections. Okay? The functioning of our security services, such as the police, the army, and other security services. Also, the manner, very, very importantly, the manner in which the finances of the country should be managed, and also provisions regarding the powers of traditional leaders, as well as for the creation and the establishment of those Chapter 9 institutions. You will note Chapter 9 of the Constitution, okay, is that chapter that creates institutions that support and promote our constitutional democracy. And examples of these Chapter 9 institutions, for instance, is the Office of the Public Protector and the South African Human Rights Commission. Okay? Then also very, very importantly, the Constitution provides for the 9 provinces of the country. The Constitution also provides for the 11 official languages, as well as our national symbols, such as our flag and our coat of arms. Okay, students, now you should know by now that South Africa has a very unique or distinct constitution. Okay, and in Africa, our constitution stands out. Why? Because our constitution has a chapter on its own, okay? An entire chapter dedicated to the enforcement and fulfillment of fundamental human rights. Okay, this chapter is known shortly as our Bill of Rights. Okay, chapter 2 of the Constitution, known as our Bill of Rights. And these rights are known as fundamental human rights. Okay, as it says here on page 161, Chapter 2 of the Constitution lists all of the fundamental or basic human rights that are protected by our Constitution. And examples are given to you: the right to equality, the right to life, the right to freedom of expression, the right to human dignity, and many more. So if you see on page 161, the illustration of how our Constitution is set out, okay? Chapter 1 speaks of our founding provisions, for instance. As I mentioned earlier, Chapter 2 speaks of our Bill of Rights, and then it sets out the functions of government. It sets out cooperative government, for instance, parliament, the powers of the president and the national executive in chapter 5. What is very important for us is chapter 8, courts and the administration of justice. Chapter 9, those institutions supporting constitutional democracy. Okay, so you must familiarize yourself, okay? You must know, okay? For exam purposes at least, you must know that our Constitution consists out of 14 chapters, and that yes, okay? Students, just hold on. I just need to take a call quickly. Jy gaan my mos net help by die gym. Okay, sorry about that, students. So you should know that our Constitution consists out of 14 chapters and 7 schedules. It's important for you to know what each chapter stands for. So if it asks you chapter 8, you must say courts and the administration of justice. If it asks you chapter 11, you must be able to answer. It relates to security services. And if they ask you about Schedule 1, you must say Schedule 1 as a reference to our national flag. Okay, so that is very, very important. Those are bonus marks for you students. Are there any questions so far? Any questions for me so far? Okay. Let's continue. Okay. So now we're going to see why the South African Constitution is so important. Why? Firstly, because of its transformative nature. Okay, and here we speak, the aim and spirit of the Constitution is to transform our country and our society. To transform it from what? So let's see what transformative constitutionalism speaks of. Okay, so one of the most important aims of the Constitution is to address the social and economic injustices of the past. Okay, therefore, for this reason, the South African Constitution may be characterized as a transformative constitution. So let's see what transformative constitutionalism entails. Okay, it means the constitution drives the process of firstly social and economic transformation. Okay, how does it do this? By making provisions. Okay, by making provision for measures to address the injustices and inequalities of the past. Okay, we know that it's characterized in Section 9 of our Constitution, our Equality Clause, that some of these measures include affirmative action, the protection of socio-economic rights, and the prohibition of unfair discrimination. Okay, now if you look at what our interim constitution said, our 1993 constitution, okay, it stated that our constitution, you must know this, please make NB next to it, okay, it provides for a historic bridge between the past of a deeply divided society characterized by strife, conflict, untold suffering, and injustice, and a future founded on the recognition of human rights, democracy, peaceful coexistence, and the development of opportunities for all South Africans, irrespective of color, race, class, belief, or sex. Okay. Okay, so this is one reason why chapter 2 of our constitution is so important. Why? Because it creates the creation of our Bill of Rights. Okay, okay, students. So another important aspect is the aspect of transformative justice. Okay, and Ubuntu. Okay, students, I'm going to have to apologize to you now. I need to take an important work meeting that's going to take about 20 minutes. Okay, 15 to 20 minutes. So you will need to give me guidance on whether you're going to wait the 15 or 20 minutes or whether you're going to wait on Wednesday's class for me to continue. Just indicate in the chat function whether I should come back online in the next 15 or 20 minutes. I'm prepared to do so to continue this class. Then we'll have the class so until 7 p.m. If not, then we can continue this discussion tomorrow. Sorry, on Wednesday. So I will wait on your comments in the chat function. But this is it's a work thing, it's a meeting I need to attend quickly. Okay, so students, I will wait on your comments in the chat function. Okay.